Ladies and gentlemen, we're floating in space.
Hello. Welcome aboard the Pleasure Cruise Day, something or other. Forget about that. I've got a story. It's a story that begins with a phrase that sits at the beginning of every truly terrifying tale. Better get out the YouTube voice. Many moons ago, I was on Twitter. Late 2025, the Streamer Awards. Category, Best VTuber. The nominations were full of established favourites. Kenji, Chibidoki, Iron Mouse, Mori Calliope, and a newcomer bearing the name, The Burnt Peanut. Of course, he was crowned the winner. Of course, the people on Elon's torture application screamed a dreaded scream. The masses were unhappy. They were talking about idol culture and community and Twitch and the normies and anti-VTuber discrimination. You see, this Burnt Peanut individual was not particularly friendly with the label of VTuber, and neither were a lot of his core fans. Chances are good that a solid chunk of his nominations were put forward by mischievous members of that audience attempting to wind him up. His win was a joke and an insult, all in one, and Twitter was not smiling. Not actually a big surprise now I say it out loud. Should probably drop the whole horror thing. Let's give this situation the clown music it deserves. There we go. That whole disagreement ended up reminding me of some I've seen regurgitated time after time in VTuber circles. Why can't VTubers get any respect around here? Is it that pesky idol culture? Is it because everyone's too fake and won't talk about their boyfriends? Are all VTubers just a bunch of sellouts chasing the algorithm? A mainstream audience is all biased bullies who just won't give them a chance. Is going mainstream even a good thing in the first place? Why is he a peanut? These wheels have been spun many times before. However, that was 2025. Fast forward 2026, and the Burnt Peanut is looking at a reputation in shambles. He has been officially sanctioned by the internet zeitgeist as corny and annoying. Not even AT&T is friends with him anymore. His days as a streamer award darling now seem like something we all just collectively imagined. Embarrassing viral clips, obnoxious fans, a horde of cheap imitators, and the whiff of dodgy politics brought the Peanut's empire crumbling down to ash. Like, Rome. I don't know, something like that. The popular trend of sticking your lips on a pickle or whatever had washed away with the tide, taking the whims of the audience with it. The dust settled, the world kept turning. And in all of that, another chance had been squandered. It seems we are still no closer to finding out whether VTubers are seen as legitimate and authentic enough to crack long-term mainstream success. Or are we? I have done the hard and extensive research many would never dare attempt to answer this series of quandaries. This includes unwillingly stumbling upon images of more than one of these peanut VTubers with their, let's just say, rod and tackle out. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. But I must deliver the facts as a true professional hardcore VTubing journalist. I went hard. I have now come home. I delivered to you the most unnecessarily thorough breakdown of the peanut VTuber craze, streamer authenticity, and mainstream popularity that you never even asked for. You're still welcome.
Section 1. The second peanut VTuber of all time.
Okay, let's start simple. To make sense of the Burnt Peanut and what he represents, we need to understand who he is and what he does. Like, actually understand it, not just vaguely gesture at him being irritating. If we are going to be haters, I see no reason why we can't be informed haters. To that end, I'll have to talk about Peanut's stream content as a body of creative work with particular aesthetic cues, themes, and stylism. AKA, I'm going to be treating him like an artist. That's not something we really do that often around these parts. People don't really treat streaming as a form of creative expression worth analysing beyond, no, it's like hanging out, man. It's just chill. He's like really chill. I think that if you asked any of Peanut's fans to point at his strongest introductory content, most would probably show you the shorts. The rhythm of Peanut's streaming style is maximised to produce clippable moments, less so from the esports ready high level execution gameplay angle and more focused on entertainment and the kind of bite-sized comedy perfectly suited to a short form out of context presentation. He said in interview that some of his biggest influences are from the world of comedy rather than live streaming. Outside of taking notes from the larger-than-life aesthetic of now disgraced and frankly always kind of overrated Dr. Disrespect, Peanut mainly draws from folks like Tim Dillon, Larry David, Shane Gillis, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was some Jim Carrey in there as well. You can definitely hear the impact of stand-up in his arsenal of ludicrous comedy voices and goofy turns of phrase, sanded down at the edges to get that real trendy TikTok snappiness.
Shh, okay. Shh, no, I've got something better. Got something better.
What? No.
You're gonna go to a big farm. You're gonna go to a big farm and all your friends are gonna be there. You're gonna run around forever.
Put uncharitably, he's a clip farmer. If that's not doing it for you, I could pinch evil Coco Melon from Giga or various tired comparisons to the annoying orange. He has dialed up his delivery to be maximally stimulating and engaging at all moments of the stream for increased viewer retention and to generate a steady flow of TikTok brain rot chum. He has oriented a sizable chunk of his most popular content around extraction shooter titles like Escape from Tarkov and Ark Raiders that reliably produce intense, weird or dramatic moments for him to bounce off. He relies on a pretty well-worn and established bag of tricks, including cartoonish voices, mimetic catchphrases, bombastic masculine bravado, explosive reactions, and juvenile vulgarity. Oh, and lest we forget, loud equals funny. We sure do love loud equals funny.
Die!
I'm gonna be honest, to me, Peanut just sounds like Family Guy Alex Jones.
Show me the enemy. Destroy the child.
If we're asking me to interject a fat slab of subjectivity into the mix here, putting aside the off-field issues for the moment, I think Burnt Peanut's kind of, well, he's not great, but I feel like some of the backlash is a little disproportionate. I know that might not be what some folks want to hear, so let me show some actual working out. The man has an aggressive focus on jokes at all costs, which means Peanut invariably operates on quantity over quality, by a pretty wide margin. He constantly has to keep the keys jangling to make sure folks aren't clicking away, and even if he can land something a little sharper every so often, it's going to be padded on all sides with too much repetition and filler to be all that memorable. This is palatable in clips, but loses the luster in a stream or video in record time. For example, I included that going to the big farm bit earlier, which I happen to think is at least a pretty good joke. Although it might have been an even better joke if he hadn't repeated it almost verbatim at least 3 other times. And look, comedy, legitimately difficult to get good at to any level of consistency, and ideally I'd want to give him grace for at least honestly trying to be funny, or at least funny in a way that wasn't just 7 layers of post-irony masquerading as a joke. Let's be real, the Twitch mainstream isn't exactly boasting a stellar roster at the moment. On that basis alone, I do feel like I should support the guy who's taking a stab at something a bit different, but execution remains king, and I just don't think he has the sauce to get there as it stands. Although to bring back the off-field issues for a moment, we better address the,
Let me kill one more homeless person and then I'll be right with you. Do you mind?
Oh, I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
God, I love killing homeless people. God, I love killing homeless people. Doreka-san. Ooh. Peanut-san. Oh, Doreka-san. Oh. People are always like, oh, dude, Peanut's such an ignorant American. He always praising his country, dude. Be proud of where you live, dumbass!
Yes, Peanut's not just recycling the joke cadence from edgy shock jock comics of the 2000s, we have to get the rancid politics along for the ride. These clips aren't even the bad stuff, they're just indicative of the usual. This side of Peanut's online presence is one of those not so well hidden secrets where he's never specifically stated his politics, but he's also not very good at hiding his biases. At another point in time, that might not have been enough to sink him, but in the glorious current year, I don't speak only for myself in saying that a lot of people are not here to listen to some greasy conservative blowhard smugly wipe their ass on George Carlin's hand-me-downs. But even putting aside the question of whether it's even a remotely good idea to be exhuming the corpse of 2000's shock jock anti-political correctness material in 2026, Peanut's approach to edgy comedy is just not that original. I remember hearing a lot of these jokes back in high school over a decade ago, and most of them are way older than that. Obviously that's what Old Mate is calling back to. His streams are an attempt to recreate that couch multiplayer LAN party vibe of just hanging out with the rowdy lads. I'm well aware that the audience exists. It's a big fluffy nostalgia blanket for the Call of Duty kids and the dipshit dads who used to watch Bill O'Reilly. But even as someone who did enjoy dark and edgy comedy in the bad old days, I've not only seen a lot better than this, I also remember why we don't need it to come back. If you really wanted me to ease up on the criticisms and act a little bit more constructively, his strongest work from my view is when he uses the game to create some simple little narratives. In the video Peanut's Revenge, Old Mate is accosted in-game by some stream snipers who take out him and his buddy and only offer a revive if he plays by their rules.
Okay.
Get out.
Alrighty.
Your stream time, by the way.
Okay,
now follow me. If you make any funny business,
I won't make no funny business.
Rather than just being an annoyance, Peanut's exaggerated framing means that these stream snipers are effectively recast as dastardly villains who cheated their way into taking our main character hostage. It's only with the help of some loyal fans who happen to be on the server that Peanut can assemble a crew and show these cheaters who's boss.
Sir, listen to me. There's 2 dirty stream snipers down there. I need your help. We gotta get him.
It doesn't sound like much, but just that extra sprinkle of context can elevate the stakes of an otherwise very routine gun battle. Peanut doesn't just stand to lose the loot in this scenario, he would be letting the cheaters win. The audience would be left with this narratively unsatisfying ending of the villains triumphing over the hero. And everyone knows you can't let the bad guys win.
Oh, that's him! This is him! Take this, you piece of shit! Eat that, you piece of garbage! Yes!
Being a character in this case lends itself well to this kind of larger-than-life storytelling. Whether he's doing something on the scale of a full match storyline or just a one-off character sketch, leaning into the narrative elements is when I personally find Peanut a little more watchable and can sort of wrap my head around what fans might see in him. If you're a more casual stream viewer, someone looking for easily accessible snack food content to watch after work, and this guy is cracking jokes similar to the ones that you've heard Netflix comedians making, and adding these hero-villain story beats to make the chaos of gameplay a little easier to follow, of course I get why that would work.
I'll tell you what's about to happen. We're about to all get out of here alive! That's what's about to happen, boys! We're teaming up!
I do want to stress that this is not new by any means. VTubing has had this whole angle on lock practically as long as it's existed, and even plenty of facecam streamers have indulged in this kind of role-playing element. But, if I had to something the devil his due, that would be my answer. As legend has it, Peanut started life as a broadly unsuccessful facecam streamer, mainly focusing on fairly dry content related to Escape from Tarkov. A lack of momentum did eventually get him to throw in the towel for a time before being coaxed back into streaming by a buddy, this time opting to match his Burnt Peanut username with an actual Peanut avatar as a bit of a Hail Mary. The rest sort of came naturally as the presentation gave him more room to lean into zany antics over technical skill. It turned out that swapping the flavour from twitchy energy drink eye strain over to laid-back popcorn belly laughs was exactly what a lot of casual viewers were craving. You don't even need to understand the game he's playing to get into Peanut. And so Peanut did more of it and the character was born. If my calculations serve, the Burnt Peanut does indeed count as a VTuber. There has been debate on this front, but I'm pretty firm on my answer. Regardless of whether he or anyone else is happy about that is between them and God, but the facts are immovable. I'm sorry. Even putting aside the avatar he's operating being a virtual character, which should be enough for most people, with the camp and exaggeration in his aesthetic and style, the rudimentary aspects of fictional lore, and the fact that he even decided to give his fans a goofy name, there is no escaping it. He might have stumbled backwards into all of these calling cards unintentionally, but he is hitting all of the VTuber notes all the same, in some cases even louder and more flamboyantly than some of the macho-pined corporate idol VTubers. But in saying that, we're not quite telling the whole story. Because even if a lot of this stuff in principle counts as doing VTuber things, it chafes pretty hard against a very simple question. Why does his fanbase overwhelmingly hate VTubers then?
Oh, no!
If I have correctly pointed to the core elements of resonance in his work and then drawn a straight line across to those found in VTubing, then why do they act like it's an insult? Clearly they like this stuff when he does it, so why is it different when anyone else does? Well, because he's the exception to the rule. As far as I'm concerned, the Burnt Peanut was, in his heyday of late 2025 and early 2026, VTubing's Eminem moment. Let me explain.
Section 2. Hi kids, do you like Primus?
VTubing in the West has always had pretty obvious holes in its major demographic captures. We have female VTubers that appeal to the boys, male VTubers that appeal to the ladies, and VTubers who appeal to a general cross market. You'll probably notice the glaring omissions here, namely male VTubers who mostly appeal to guys and female VTubers who mostly appeal to ladies, the former of which I want to focus on more here. These gaps in the mainstream market are not for lack of trying in either case. Covers Holostars, for one, have been trying to seal up that whole boys for boys demographic for years at this point, to varying levels of success. I personally enjoy the Holostars boys, I reckon they're pretty cool, but they've not really managed to cross over to the mainstream Twitch and gaming spaces for a few reasons, one of which being the fact that they just share a lot of creative DNA with the rest of Hololive's output. If you aren't on board with Hololive's whole shtick and mythos in general, the lads probably aren't going to change your mind. Oh yeah, and the incompetent marketing and red tape management don't help. Look, Holostars is a whole thing we don't have time for right now. Even groups with higher sub-gents don't really fill this gap. Niji Sanji and First Stage Productions are doing alright, but seem pretty locked into presenting bodgies for the widgies, as it were. That's an Australian thing, don't worry about it. That could leave the floor open to the indie scene, and in fairness I'd say that folks like Kenji, for example, have made some decent inroads, but even he hasn't managed to scoop up the same kind of audience that Peanut has amassed in such a short period of time. Some will say this is down to a lack of tangible interest from the core male demographic for VTubing, that being the male otakus who are mainly just here for cute girls. And while that does appear to be broadly the case for now, it isn't the whole story. Here's the skinny. One of VTubing's biggest untapped markets has been the edgy FPS gamer boys that make up a large portion of Twitch in both audience numbers and cultural influence. If you want to get to the top of the streaming game as a male streamer looking to appeal to other guys, you gotta have a plan for these boys, there's no way around it. And while the human taste buds are a magical thing and all types of people can love all types of stuff, blah blah blah, yeah, we get it, you're very woke, we need to get down to the brass tacks. These particular boys overwhelmingly want to watch guys they think are cool. That could be cool in a loudmouth class clown kind of way, maybe more of like a macho tough guy vibe, trend chasing hype beast, smart ass straight talker, those kind of things. Point is, a lot of your ability to get the gamer boys depends on how well you can sell a performance of machismo and masculine swagger to impress or appeal to other men. As Burnt Peanut says himself,
I just want them to feel like we're just hanging out. Like they're my boys. And I genuinely, that's my mindset. When I look over at my bungulators, they're my boys when I talk to them. That's why I talk to them the way I do.
He's not even looking at the ladies. A lot of these streamers are specifically trying to cultivate a bit of a lad social circle, a parasocial boys club. Regardless of how he carries himself, Kenji is, at the end of the day, an anime character, and for a lot of these lads, that is already an aesthetic concession too far. You are automatically lame and embarrassing, and a grown-ass man, by the way, goat is washed, blah blah blah. Anime is for cringe lords and creeps, and they're like normal, man. This be the spot where the Burnt Peanut fits in. For these type of lads, Peanut has become their version of, look, I don't like rap music, but there's this guy called Eminem and he's different to all the other rappers, he's fully sick, man. To pinch a phrase from Dan Olsen, he's the one bringing that age-old classic combo of acidic vulgarity, casual violence, and an excess of juvenile machismo. This is part of why I'm willing to dismiss a lot of calls that the man is an industry plant. Other accusations of the number fudging aside, we'll get back to that, there is a non-trivial silent majority audience of older Gen Z to millennial men looking for a nostalgic throwback to the good old days of Call of Duty lobbies. Even better if that streamer could emulate the playful, boyish juvenilia of being a happy and carefree teenager again. Perhaps without even doing so intentionally, the Peanut has, to coin a phrase, class of 09'd himself into a pretty sweet position. He gets to leverage the jester's privilege afforded to him by the VTuber model to yell and scream and grumble and squeak in ways that would come across as very off-putting and deranged from a camera streamer. Unless you're like Germa or iShowSpeed and have the source to actually sell decent physical comedy, there's just a ceiling on how silly you can get on camera before it looks asinine and forced. Peanut's ceiling on ridiculous clown behaviour is considerably higher thanks to the cartoon presentation priming the audience for cartoon-level antics. He can just get away with so much more. But in the same breath, Peanut doesn't look like a cringy anime girl. The aesthetic daylight between him and the stereotypical image of a VTuber gives him plausible deniability. All old mate needs to do is whip out his catchphrase that like, oh dude, I'm not a VTuber, I'm a PTuber, wink, and thus indicate enough irony-poisoned disavowal of the weebs for the gamers to feel comfy getting on board. It doesn't really matter if anyone actually believes that a VTuber or a PTuber are like meaningfully different things or even like real at all. It's a nice convenient catch-all to reaffirm that, oh, this guy's not like the other rappers, he's something new and different, so I'm not weird for liking him. Peanut gets to inherit the benefits of VTubing's creative freedoms, but retain an authenticity that would never be actually afforded to anyone in that scene by a mainstream audience by rejecting that community and insisting that he's nothing like them, despite all the evidence pointing the other direction. If you just keep saying you're different from all the rest enough times, people who don't know or care to know better will completely believe you, even if it's very obviously bullshit. I mean, if any VTuber fan was masochistic enough, they could try to politely point out that Peanut's whole style is actually not that uncommon in VTubing. In fact, being loud and boisterous and vulgar has a literal whole trope attached to it. That's the gremlin. It's a very established formula. Loads of people work in this lane. It's been running as the creative counterpoint to the cute, ditzy, clean-cut idol for over half a decade. Literally one of the most enduring gremlin characters in popular VTubing, Chibidoki, was nominated for that same award Peanut got. His stuff is just not all that new in the broader streaming landscape. It's just the first time that someone has done it in a way that's more acceptable to mainstream Twitch. If this is considered creatively revolutionary to people who play Arc Raiders and Tarkov, then honestly that's more of an indictment of those player bases than anything. God, watching the video essays on this guy where they act like he invented the idea of streaming video games to be entertaining.
He realized something most streamers never figure out. No one cares if you're good at the game. They care about how funny your death was.
You're right, man. I wouldn't have thought of that before fucking Peanut. Look, you can try to explain that. Good luck getting anyone to listen. The boys have chosen him as their man, and they're not looking to swap or be told any different on the subject. In fact, they are mighty protective of their man, and are more than happy to use him as a bulwark against all the VTuber fans they don't like. This is where a lot of the issues from December came from, beginning with the disagreements around a fairly inconsequential award and then spiraling out into this whole symposium on, the nature of the medium and, who technically counts as a VTuber, and dingbats from the sidelines screaming about anime schoolgirls, voice changes, idol culture, and quote-unquote being true to yourself. From a disconnected, neutral perspective, the Burnt Peanut winning VTuber of the Year is not overly confusing. He had a massive year in terms of growth and audience, even if there seem to be caveats there. Again, we'll get back to it. Kickstarted a pretty major sea change in how people were streaming Tarkov and Arc, and hit a brand new demographic VTubers hadn't touched before. For anyone on the outside looking in, that is a pretty convincing case. If you're looking for someone who had a really big 2025 and happens to be a VTuber, I gotta admit, he is a pretty logical choice. But this is where we need to circle back around to the confusing nature of the term VTuber. With all of this talk of edgy teenagers, I've kind of been dancing around the issue, so let's be out with it. The Burnt Peanut and his fans are not part of VTubing as a community, an industry, or a creative lineage, and pretty plainly do not want to be. He does count as a VTuber, as I explained, but mainly through recreating the aesthetic and stylistic cues of VTubing and then divorcing them from their original context and disavowing everyone who already came up with those ideas. This was probably the strongest counter-argument to Peanut getting the award in my view. Hell, some folks would even use this as grounds to disqualify him from being a VTuber at all. He does not collaborate with VTubers. He doesn't talk about having any respect or reverence for VTubers past. He doesn't use VTuber lingo. He doesn't shout anyone out. The man would struggle to name more than about 5 VTubers off the top of his head, and yet his fans would profess that, he's better than all of the competition. Probably, they assume. They haven't checked, but they like him, and they are very important, so it's probably true. I mean, haven't you heard? Rumour has it that these VTubers are a bunch of greasy dudes with a voice changer using a cute childlike model to hide their hideous flesh and fulfill grotty roleplay as a Japanese schoolgirl. even though there are literally thousands of active VTubers, all of them are just men pretending, and no one in the better part of a decade has figured this out yet apart from the gamer boys. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, could you imagine if that was the... Whoa, turn that off. Also, and forgive me for this one, but if I may be so bold, if I was a big fan of mainstream Twitch, I probably wouldn't be too keen to throw stones at other communities for having a problem with sexual impropriety. Call might be coming from inside the house on that one. Yeah, below the belt, but why do I have to dignify this? Might as well slip the gloves off at this rate, not like charitability is going to get me that far with the dude bros. These people are not interested in VTubing aside from spray painting its most marketable ideas to be stripped and resold to an audience who would never touch the original article for fear of catching the gay. There was a Jinxie clip floating around where he was so unhappy at having to watch Iron Mouse sing at the awards show that he faked internet issues so he didn't have to even be seen next to it. I mean, you do have to respect the man's position. What if his dad walked in? How is Iron Jaw Jinxie supposed to explain to his dad that, he
didn't actually want to watch the pink cartoon, Dad, and I was just trying to find the beer and football channel.
God, I say that like any of the other reactions were much better.
Hey, this was my fucking face whenever they turned World of Warcraft into a bunch of shit with dudes wearing makeup and girls talking about how they feel.
Why are these type of gamers always trying to convince everyone they're so tough or whatever? Like, you just chill, man. Just play video games. It's not that serious. I mean, I'm well aware that a pretty solid undercurrent to anti-VTuber backlash has been stoked by misogyny, a contempt for women expressing themselves in a way seen as girlish, lowbrow and frivolous, and an equal contempt for the men who decide to find value or resonance in that cutesy or girlish expression. And of course an assumption that this is the only dynamic that exists. But most of the time, they try to hide that part.
The master so if you win the VTuber award, big rage bait. Yeah, think about that. Think about the damage you could do to the VTuber community if you won as a PTuber.
That is an excellent point, Shroud. Excellent point. Wow.
In the case of December, a pretty sizable chunk of fans voted for the burnt peanut as an openly spiteful move towards all the other cringy anime people nominated, and considerably more folks were willing to take his corner after the fact for similar reasons. Best believe there were a lot of Muppets itching for an excuse to make fun of all the weird nerdy kids, or else pile on the disingenuous finger wagging and use Peanut as a nice convenient excuse. Most of it was just peripheral bickering around definitions and who should be allowed to win what in the arbitrary award show. We had the whole usual power scaling rigmarole about whose audience was currently sending more death threats to whom, with a pretty decent brunt of the abuse fired at fellow award nominee Iron Mouse, who, for her part, seemed to be at least trying to play nice with everyone. That whole side of the situation staggered into yet more inane bollocks that I won't even touch to give this video some degree of focus, but please believe, people seem very comfortable being psychotically uncharitable to Iron Mouse, regardless of the fact that she's not really done anything anywhere near objectionable enough to deserve that. I include certain members of the VTuber community in that, by the way. Some of you were moving way out of line. Disagreement is one thing. Uploading racist AI music linked to her official Spotify as some next level deranged harassment, that's another. You'll be glad to know though, Peanut helped de-escalate all the tension by saying that his audience were a bunch of good blokes who were too busy having a laugh and a cold one to harass anyone, mate.
It is not my community saying anything bad to Iron Mouse. Maybe here, there, maybe some light comments, but I've heard she's been getting death threats. I've heard people have been saying disgusting things, and let me tell you who that is. That's not the fun-loving bungulator sitting back on his couch watching the stream for a couple hours of work. You know who that is? It's the community that can't handle that she congratulated us for winning.
Cheers, Peanut. Not sure why I expected anything different. He didn't even give us the usual disavowal of, I don't condone harassment, presumably because he didn't want to compromise his air of being an easygoing class clown. I mean, in fairness to Peanut, it's not very easygoing to tell someone, hey man, if you wouldn't mind, could you please stop screaming at the lady with a disability for literally no reason? Cheers, man. I get the impression that Peanut is invested in him and his boys, and everything outside of that couldn't be less interesting to him. Something he's made abundantly clear, almost certainly to his own detriment.
Who has the most hilarious dollar in the world? Wasn't it Venezuela? You think their dollar went up or down due to recent events? USA, back-to-back 1-1 champion!
So in the midst of all that bullshit, why exactly should anyone who knows better be all that impressed when he's crowned as the best the genre has to offer? Like, based on what? Haven't even mentioned that it hardly took a week for our predictable clips to start re-emerging. We've got the homophobic slur one, the one where he seems bewildered that a fan from Afghanistan had internet and was, quote, still alive. We had giggling about someone almost dropping the N-word, jokes about Iranian people getting bombed, and I'll even leave a blank space here for you to include any that drop after I publish the video. Considering who the man has been dragging knuckles with, I'm kinda shocked it even took that long. This is just what meathead chuds are like. We all know guys who act like this and how most of them are in dire need of some deodorant and some jokes that aren't 15 years out of date. And sure, at the end of the day, this was all over an awards show, and they are pretty exclusively a waste of time. But they are a very loud waste of time that people did care about at least a little, considering how much yapping this generated. Of course, I could go on shadowboxing various bad takes I half remember from last year, especially now that the cultural headwind is on my side, but I don't think I need to take too many pains to get you on board with the idea that, despite his penetration into the Twitch mainstream, the Burnt Peanut is not a good representative or steward for VTubing culture. He's a co-opter at best. But that might prompt the question of who is? Who can I offer as an alternative to the Burnt Peanut as emblematic of VTubing's best characteristics? All the better if they can help us straighten out all this talk about mainstream success and authenticity and so forth. Well, you remember that Phineas and Ferb line about having 2 nickels?
Section 3. The Yellow Big Header.
Welcome to the ポンポコパーク100均
ポンポコパーク
100均
やばいテーマパークに来ちゃった
何
This here is a streamer called Peanuts-kun. Stop me if you've heard this one, but he is, indeed, a Japanese VTuber who looks like a peanut. I, for one, seem to keep bringing him up in all my recent videos for some reason, but I will now give him a proper introduction so we can compare and contrast him with the Burnt Peanut as a surprisingly suitable foil. And yes, for those at the back of the class, I am aware that there is a third Peanut VTuber, unfortunately. I would not even walk into a room with that man if you paid me to. However, I'm also aware that he is more desperate for attention than I have been desperate for anything in my entire life, and as such is a waste of time to discuss in any level of detail. If you desperately need to know about him for whatever reason, you can go and watch the Papa Meat video or several thousand others that have been made at this point, and that's all assuming that he's not jumped to the next trend by now or fallen off a cliff. I don't know, I don't care. Whatever, he's just a waste of time. Back to more important matters. Peanuts-kun is a character VTuber. In fact, he was originally purely a cartoon character. Peanuts-kun originates from the bizarro independent animated series Oshare ni Naritai, aka I Want to Be Trendy. This series kicked off in early July 2017 as a low-budget amateur production from the mind of one Mode Aim, featuring very limited 2D animation and mostly his immediate family on voice acting duties.
おしゃれになりたい第1話ハッシュタグ
It's about a peanut guy who wants to be fashionable, and he keeps meeting weird one-note characters, and I don't really understand.
うさぎはね、寂しいと死んじゃうの。だからね、せめて楽しく死にたい。
Look, I don't recommend it unless you're a true freak for outsider animation, like Rodfellows type beat, or indeed, yeah, kinda like the annoying orange. The show seems as if it's supposed to be poking fun at internet trends or dumb fads or whatever. I'm sure stuff gets lost in translation or cultural context, but I'm equally confident that Peanut is just kind of a weird dude if the rest of his career is anything to go by. Anyway, Mode Aim decided to spin off the Peanuts-kun character into his own VTuber persona in early December of 2017. This not only makes him our first Peanut VTuber, but actually puts him within striking distance of being the first ever male VTuber in general. Depending on who you ask and what their criteria is, that's a whole separate semantic thing. Just for frame of reference for history buffs, this is 1 year after the debut of Kazuna Ai, the person who came up with the term VTubing and who Peanuts-kun cites as a key inspiration. 4 months after the first known activity of Iron Mouse over here in the Western indie scene. 3 months after the world was introduced to Tokunosora and saw the word Hololive for the first time. 2 months before we were shown the faces of Nijisanji's first wave, whose cost-effective 2.5D designs would go on to move the industry standard away from the more expensive 3D. A little over 3 months before anyone would choose to call themselves Hoshimachi Suisei, and just over 6 whole years before we could learn that there was another called Peanut. In February 2018, a mere week before Nijisanji rocked up, a character from episode 4 of Oshari ni Naritai voiced by Peanut's sister received a slightly pasty redesign and also debuted as a brand new independent VTuber. That would be Phantom Thief and Tanuki Ninja Ponpoko. From what I gather, despite launching the Peanut first, Old Mate was not convinced that male VTubers were going to have much fuel in the tank compared to the ever-fearsome cute girl demographic. So to that end, he asked his younger sister if she was keen to give streaming a try, and she was. Check out the debut video.
はいどうもこんにちは。またまた出てきました新型バーチャル YouTuber の甲賀流忍者ポンポコです。よろしくね。
Yeah, we're talking DIY old school. This is practically digital finger puppets. You can see her drag her tail around with the mouse. Even got a little Dora the Explorer moment where she pretends to hear the audience asking to see her cool Tanuki transformation.
元の姿が見たい？仕方ないな。じゃあ行くよ。3、2、1。へー、すごいでしょ。これが元の姿だよ。
It's very quaint. I personally find it pleasantly nostalgic, if for no other reason than this is way too corny to get away with these days. The kayfabe meta has evolved and left this kind of thing behind, much to the chagrin of certain old heads. I'm sure we have some geezers watching who still want this stuff back. A fun thing to note about Ponpoko is that she and Peanuts-kun grew up in the small Japanese city of Koka, about an hour's drive from Kyoto. This region is known for both being a historically important area in the development and refinement of the Kogaryu ninjutsu tradition, and also one that includes Shigaraki, a town famous for its pottery, specifically the Tanuki statues. This VTuber character isn't some random Japanese cultural artifacts, it is literally based on the history of the city they both grew up in. As an aside, anyone who is arguing that Burnt Peanut isn't an eligible VTuber because his model is too cheap or rudimentary to shape up next to the more elaborate industry standard live 2D rigs should be taking notes right around now. Poco and Peanut's independent homebrew models help set the groundwork for one of VTubing's most enduring double acts. You do not need a model fresh out of Iron Vertex to be a VTuber, and attempting to draw a line in the sand around who does and doesn't count on an aesthetic level is an exercise usually rooted in arbitrary bias. Peanuts-kun and his little posse of characters have always looked visually squonky and, if we're being honest, none too flattering, and yet he's been accepted as a VTuber for longer than most of us have even known what that word meant. If the model is predominantly a virtual character who does VTuber related things, then I don't think we need to do too much more hair splitting on that front. Anyway, back on track. Being siblings and still living in their parents' house gave Poco and Peanut every reason to collaborate and hang out. I mean, they basically worked together as a production duo from the jump. You can see Peanut fiddling with cables and equipment in Poco's very first livestream. This naturally ended up birthing the beloved dynamic of Pocopi. Poco as the energetic and bubbly younger sister, and Peanut as the drier straight man proved to be a pretty solid formula for some pretty solid banter. The sibling energy is beautifully preserved, just the right balance of your family and I'll always care about you with I know all of your buttons. And I'll press them whenever I think it's funny. They play video games together, they pull pranks, they touch a mild amount of grass, they hunt for bargains, they have some cheeky maccas, they perform at live shows, they do crossovers with VR chat and Tamagotchi, they star in ads for phone service companies. Some of these clips make me feel like I'm on another planet.
Do you know Peanuts-kun?
I don't know.
No? Okay.
It's worth remembering that Peanuts-kun is still mostly a character. He's a performance. The voice is an exaggerated put on, and if you keep an ear out, you can occasionally hear the odd slip up.
ピーナッツくんちょっと呼んでよ。
何？録音してんのこれ？
そうそうそう。ピーナッツくん呼んで。
はい。はい。
I referred to the person, the quote-unquote real guy who plays Peanuts-kun by his old director name Mode Aim earlier, but fans these days go with the moniker Anipoko. To the best of my knowledge, neither he nor Poco have ever presented any type of real name or face anywhere on the internet, hence why we have to rely on nicknames. I'm not just being coy. This video was an April Fool's joke, those are actors. Whatever the case, these two have made themselves into something of an institution of the Japanese indie scene. With an enviable shrewdness, Pocopi have been effective in leveraging their one major point of difference over most of the corporate competition. They're independent, proudly so. They don't have to wait for management approval, they don't have to stick to any particular script, they can do as they please. Comes with trade-offs, for sure, in terms of having to handle all of the back-end management on top of the creative duties, and not having any institutional backup if things go majorly south, but that added freedom opens a lot of doors, not least of which are their options when collaborating. Honeypoko has even mentioned in interview, one that I can't find anymore, but this is definitely true, Scout's Honor, that he and Poco keep their creative vibe pretty flexible to make sure they fit in with any potential collaborators smoothly. It's allowed Pocopi to be a little bit of everything to everyone. If they need to be a little better behaved with the corporate VTubers, they can do that. If the vibes are a little bit more weird and chaotic, they can match that as well. It's potentially why they have managed to garner a surprisingly even gender split in their fan base. Pocopi invariably ends up out of place, but to be honest, they're kind of always out of place. They've always been one of one. Honestly, the fact that they don't really neatly fit anywhere means that paradoxically, they can sort of fit in wherever. It's not like they're going to be more out of place than usual. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's part of the guiding philosophy behind their yearly get-together event streams, Pompoko 24, which ran a full 24 hours. These were extremely elaborate variety streams, always featuring a stacked guest list of Japanese VTubers and content creators of many stripes, all just mixed in together and hanging out. Oh hey Kason. One of the truly inspired ideas here is a lot of the advertising blocks between segments are actually ads submitted by other independent VTubers, creators, or even small-time brands, musicians, and games. There's a whole application process and a committee that checks over the best and funniest entries, and if they like what you've submitted, it goes to broadcast. You can still find an archive of all the previous winners on the website, which is an absolute treasure trove of underrated creators. You could spend a whole afternoon looking through this. We haven't had a new Pompoko 24 since 2024, which is a bit of a shame, but considering the monstrous amount of organising and logistics, I more than understand. Even outside of the sibling partnership, our buddy Peanut keeps pretty busy. He has another yearly holiday tradition with popular Japanese Nijisanji liver Kenmochi Toya, in which Peanuts-kun gives the Christmas gift of a deeply deranged and often uncomfortably personal love song, collectively referred to as Topi's Christmas. Toya looks forward to it every year. The songs are kind of trash, but secretly kind of good at the same time. It requires a very particular cooked sense of humour like most of Peanuts' stuff, but it has been the onboarding point for many fans. The first few years were pretty basic when it was still kind of a throwaway novelty, but as time went on, Peanuts' ambitions aimed steadily higher. The production got more elaborate and the lyrics got more meta and fourth wall breaking, to the point that recent tracks are only superficially about Toya at best. His track for Christmas 2024 is a lumbering rap metal beast, complete with angelic choral vocals and lightning strikes. Peanut sings of a love between him and Kenmochi that is as everlasting and sacred as the heavens themselves. Two sides of the same cosmic coin like good and evil, truth and illusion, yin and yang. All of which is none too subtly taking the piss out of the fact that Buddy feels like he's stuck eternally writing the same gag song forever and ever because this joke somehow will not die. This also might be the only song I've ever heard that starts a beat switch with someone unzipping their pants. I haven't decided if that's a good thing or not. The most famous release would be Peanuts' 2022 song, Topi Overdose, which was inhumanly catchy enough in its own right to go viral. I can only really describe the situation like a VTuber not like us. Yes, really. The out-of-pocket slander for this one was so musically irresistible that practically everyone was jamming to it, making react videos, lyrical breakdowns, cover versions, and posting a whole lot of TikTok dances. Seriously, I found more TikToks than you can even imagine. Like, what is even going on here? And can someone explain why we're hitting the peanut in front of the newborn baby? Even buddies from Toya's own company were joining in to clown on him. Peanut was pulling this out at live shows and having the entire crowd sing back every single defamatory word. Oh, and flash mobs. In 2026, Topi Christmas 2022 stands at 39 million views. That's more than any original song released by Gargura in her entire career. It is almost quadruple the views of the most popular short on the Burnt Peanuts main channel. And it's not even as good as 2023.
Sometimes, I wonder if the guy who made the original beat for this song, which was a YouTube producer Doja Cat type beat called Party, ever sees whatever is happening here and just feels like Oppenheimer.
Naturally, that brings us to the fact that Peanuts Gun is actually something of a rapper and musician in his own right. He's put out several albums and EPs independently. He's done live shows that look like a Wiggles concert on crack. And he even had a concert film called PQ released on Hulu. He's got shoutouts from Pitchfork as a Song of the Summer 2024, right there next to Charlie XCX, Kendrick Lamar, and Chappell Roan. His networking skills in streaming have carried over perfectly to music as well. Peanuts' list of collaborators has seen him on stages with battle rappers, on cooking shows with J-pop girlies, and on record with people who should be far too popular to ever answer his calls. He's got a little side project with one of his rap buddies where they put out their weird commercially unviable music for people who want Adult Swim injury reserve. They have a song about the former Tottenham duo Harry Kane and Son Heung-min, because Peanuts is really into Premier League soccer. Those names mean nothing to me, by the way, but I can bet at least one person watching this feels like they just got struck by lightning hearing the name of those gentlemen in close proximity to the rapping Peanut. Song's pretty good as well. As you can imagine, tying all of this work together with any consistent creative through line like I did with the Burnt Peanut before is a little bit tricky, primarily for the reason that Peanuts-kun does adapt himself to his collaborative environment a lot more. How he acts is dependent on the energy of who he's talking to, and that's something that I only have a limited window into without much of a grasp on Japanese. I will take this opportunity to state clearly that a lot of the research I've done into Pocopi has required a lot of translation tools. The duo have practically no international presence, so resources in languages that aren't Japanese are pretty bare bones. While I'm only including information I'm fairly confident on, my methods have, by nature, been more than a little haphazard, and I want to stress that this is a crash course on Peanut and Crew, not the final word. There are almost certainly going to be gaps here. That said, I still have had experiences with Peanut's work and have developed some opinions. So here are 3 different modes that I have observed in Peanut during my own poking around to give us a small look into parts of his personality. First off is his plain-spoken straight man persona. This is one he can slip into when he's just hanging out with his sister, or more formal collabs with corporate folks where he has to somewhat mind his manners but not be too stiff. I'd struggle to say he's the serious one exactly, but he more serves as the dry counterpart to Poco. Sometimes that means he's the voice of normalcy, trying to rein her in from messing around during a video. Sometimes that means he's on the receiving end of pranks because getting an overreaction from the drier member of the duo makes for a better contrast. Second mode is a more clingy, boorish streak in which he plays the role of the comedically inept pickup artist. Of course, this is the dynamic with Kenmochi Toya on the Topi Christmas songs, but he's also played this one in his other music as well, not to mention with Kazuna Ai.
4周年おめでとう。元気でいてね。髪ツヤツヤだね。トリートメント結構。トリートメント結構。トリートメント何使って
Definitely a little divisive. Cringe comedy is not everyone's thing, and I think Peanut can be hit and miss on this front, even if the Topi antics are generally ambitious and insane enough to make it work. Being annoying and gross on purpose is still annoying and gross after all. Not helping matters is the fact that Peanut is often the most quote-unquote in character performing in this mode, which I've noticed can serve as a bit of an understandable roadblock for newcomers. It is difficult to navigate how seriously to take any of his whole deal with no further context than that face and that voice. Much as I love kayfabe, it's obviously not a very direct way of communicating. Some folks are going to find VTuber roleplaying awkward in the same way that talking to mascot characters at Disney World can feel awkward. There's a surreal, pseudo-fictional barrier there that just feels weird to cross. It's not quite a real conversation, nor is it completely fake. It's in this murky grey area somewhere, but I might talk about that some other time. Finally, you have his actual serious stuff, speaking as, or at least on behalf of, Honey Poco. You mainly hear him like this in interviews, in a more low-key conversation setting, or when he's hanging out with his rap buddies who aren't going to be quite so tolerant of the anime gags. This is the closest window you might get to see his normal personality away from the character, if that's even a thing you can really get on the internet. As you might imagine, he comes across as a fairly reserved and maybe somewhat socially awkward guy. He's very proud of Pocopi's independent status, seemingly hasn't had any plans to sign up with an agency, and is more than willing to share some choice words on the state of the creative industries, be it music, streaming, or VTubing culture. Speaking of his perspective on the industry, I should mention that while I was writing this, Pocopi invited some of the boys from the aforementioned Holostars on for a video. This was roughly 2 weeks after the announcement from Cover Corporation that they would be downsizing Holostars support to practically nothing while still taking a revenue cut, and Pocopi decided to invite the boys on for a sketch in which they attempt to poach the remaining members to their own made-up corporation. Best part is they literally pitch the lads on an open pyramid scheme and get the response,
"Yeah, that sounds better than our current contract."
Extremely spiteful and extremely based. Please go check out the translation. I could go on, but as a last ditch at brevity, that should do for an introduction to Peanuts-kun. I feel like we have now established our other Peanut Man. If I had any final point to make for the moment, I do want to be transparent about the fact that Peanuts-kun obviously isn't flawless. He does have aspects I don't prefer. He's done sponsorships for AI music company Suno in the past. Would have thought he would have known better on that one, but apparently not. He's done a few live shows with these braid attachments to the Peanut suit that really start to push into bad taste territory for me, particularly with how much his last album was pretty openly pinching ideas from popular US rappers like Kendrick Lamar and Lil Uzi Vert. It comes across a little ungracious to artists you very clearly creatively respect to mimic their genuine hairstyle on your cartoon mascot. Probably not malicious, but still not a great look. Not to mention that some of his music is just kind of trash in the uncomplicated way. The dude is not perfect, and I don't want this video to be entirely uncritical glazing. But now that's all sorted, we can get into the meat of things. I mean, Pocopi have become some of the biggest independent VTubers in the Japanese scene, and Burnt Peanut has, for better and worse, caught a pretty major wave over here in the West. That seems notable. Is it just the Peanut model? Is that all VTubing needs to break out into the mainstream? Well, if the landfill of imitators is anything to go by, that would be a no. The two Peanuts have done respectably well within their niche, but they remain pretty small fish in the bigger content creator pond. So what gives? Is there just a ceiling on how popular VTubers can get? Are the phone company brand deals and edgy Gamer Boy pandering not enough? Well, maybe not. Ask a lot of VTubing's biggest critics, and they will inform you that the genre is too tied to idol culture for them to associate. There's a small problem with this line of criticism, namely that most people's understanding of idol culture is supremely fuzzy at best. The term is just a vague catch-all that helps folks start talking past each other with maximum efficiency, because everything fantastic and everything terrible about idols is scooped up by the word culture. There's truth to the idea that idol culture is a reason that VTubing hasn't fully crossed over to the live streaming big leagues, but I don't think it's quite what people make out. If we want to do this properly, I think it's high time to be a little bit more specific about where idol culture comes from.
Intermission. A lukewarm defense of idol culture.
If we're going to be talking about the proliferation of idol culture in VTubing, there are only really two companies that have the history, influence, and creative direction to be relevant to the conversation. That's Nijisanji and Hololive, and let's be honest, it's mainly Hololive. If you want to talk about idol culture in VTubing, this is the company. They are the biggest and the loudest to rep that particular label. I'm not in a hurry to regale you with the entire company history, but the relevant part is that Hololive's industry reach and influence has led to them being pretty foundational in establishing many elements of what folks in these parts sometimes gesture at being the Japanese style of VTubing. often correlated with kayfabe, character elements, and many debts to otaku culture. By the by, the whole Japanese style thing is kind of a reductive stereotype. Plenty of Japanese VTubers don't really play any type of character, but that's a whole can of something else. In the case of Hololive, it should be noted that even within the fan circles, the whole idol culture discussion can be contentious. Not every Hololive fan approves of idols and singing and frilly outfits, and some want to see that whole side of the operation turfed entirely to focus on the gaming streams. A common notion repeated in English Hololive fan circles is the idea that Hololive talents aren't idols, they are comedians pretending to be idols. As far as I'm concerned, anyone peddling this idea is a stone cold Gumby. Hololive talents are not comedians. Hololive talents are idols pretending to be comedians, pretending to be idols. The irony goes full circle back around to sincere, buddy. You're still stuck on level 2. Watch my Advent irony video. Matsuri can say what she likes, I'm standing firm. Even without singing pop songs on stage or doing cute faces to the camera, the appeal of Hololive is built on the creative fundamentals of idol logic. That's not coming from me, that's science. The gang have been blowing their noses with Yago's Dream for over half a decade at this point. It's not a cheeky accident, it's 100% on purpose, and Hololive only pretend not to notice to avoid spoiling the joke for everyone else. The fact that they are bad idols actually makes them the perfect candidates to chase the idol dream. I still see some folks get reeled in by this little song and dance too. Oh, I can't believe this came from an official stream. You know the streamers have the internet too, right? They can see all the memes you post, and Cover Corp are also totally cool with them putting some of those memes in their content if it will make all of the lesbians on Holo Twitter start writing in all caps. It's not that crazy. They just want you to be happy and give them lots of money. But all that being the case, I still haven't explained how things loop back around or what that would even look like. So let me summarize the pitch of Hololive as I assume the company would like you to hear it. Alright, picture this. Hololive debuts a new group of VTubers for the world to watch. They are often artists, creatives, or generally interesting people with some promising talent. They could be a great singer, a good dancer, skilled at FPS games, illustrating, hell, they could just have a really great radio voice and an intriguing personality. Whatever they are, they're good, but they could be even better. That's where Hololive, in all of their glorious benevolence, has stepped in with all the resources, the audience, the industry connections, the management team, and brand recognition, and offers something to this promising young creative person. They give them a character, a sea of fans, and a big creative canvas for them to hone their skills and express themselves on, only asking in return that the talent offer a fat chunk of their paycheck and dedicate their entire waking existence to the company. For fans, this is the opportunity to buy in on the ground floor. Here is a person who is already pretty good, but they have the potential to be amazing, and you can watch them achieve all of that every step of the way. You can hear the singing get better in real time. You can see those creative influences and tastes get more specific and interesting. You can experience the glow up and say, I was there where it all began. My supportive comments, my pieces of fan art, my membership money, my unsolicited horny comments, all of that has played a small role in getting that someone onto a stage in front of a sold out arena of screaming people. That underlying emotional resonance of feeling like you were part of the process of the idol's development, that you have exclusive insight into what they're like, what they've been through, that you and the idol have some kind of connection, regardless of how strong that connection might be. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, to be clear, we're not going there just yet. All that stuff adds up. It's all intentional. Someone like Suisei isn't just revered because she's super talented now, it's also because you can go back and listen to her very first song called Comet and say, wow, this kinda sucks. And it does. But you can then flip a few years down the track and hear a song that she composed, sung, and wrote the lyrics to, with production that sounds like it cost more than my car, and a music video that probably cost more than double that again. The journey it took to get here is the story of her entire channel. You can hear the quiet, shy voice on Comet mumbling into a cheap microphone, now singing like a fully fledged J-pop superstar. A superstar who will drop a song for radio play, perform for sold out crowds, get her face in Forbes, start her own agency, and then switch on the stream to have a casual chat to you and the real fans about her distaste for vegetables or just tell you how her sister's getting on. The truth some might be uncomfortable admitting is that the Idol framework fits together with live streaming flawlessly. Hololive didn't just jam all this Idol nonsense in here by force to squeeze out a few extra dollars. The way that the two elements interact and complement each other is almost seamless. Idol culture was already built to encourage a strong parasocial and interactive connection from the fan to the artist, and let's keep it real, so was streaming and YouTube. In fact, live streams enhance that sense of familiarity and intimacy with the performer through the interactions with chat, and streamers being able to create specific relationships with viewers directly. The streamer can actually remember your profile name, maybe even have some kind of opinion of you, based on the glimpses of your personality that they get. The streamer and chat can develop in-jokes and references, a shared language to make this space feel specific and personal, even though there are still several thousand others watching. Most of all, viewers get the feeling that they know this streamer in some way, that they know a bit of their personality, their interests, their strengths, their flaws, their history, in a way that you could never get from an interview or from a piece of personal art. It feels like you're just listening to them talk. Just as is common with many other Japanese idols, Hololive wants you to see the human complexities of these performers, their struggles and their shortcomings, to contextualize a performance of polished pop music perfection. Idol shows feeling just a little too squeaky clean at times is not a bug. You're intended to marvel at the fact that the idiot you saw screaming at Repo a few days ago can get up there and dance like that. Someone who you know is just as much of a flesh and blood imperfect dorky human as you can light up the stage like a pop cultural god, scraping their boots across the same stages that have hosted musical legends. Some little old nobody, finally shining like a star. Isn't that cool? Isn't that an inspiring story? Doesn't it just go to show that with hard work, dedication, and a bit of luck, anyone can make it? That is the mythology of the idol dream for both the up-and-coming idols and the fans. It is pop star ascendancy and aspirationalism. It proclaims the time-honoured story of good things coming to those who work hard and try their best. It cries that perfection is not only a process, but it's a process that you should be chasing with everything you have. For a lot of the women in particular, it's a space where they get to be performatively sweet and cutesy and girlish and have those parts of their personality be considered exciting and interesting and valuable instead of childish or cringe. It's that chance, that mythology, that story they will make significant sacrifices to be a part of because it feels special. And as such, that wraps up the Hololive shebang. The intended experience that the company would like fans to have, or at least the die-hard fans. Obviously, there are issues with this, quite a few in fact. I'm sure you're all aware of some, but it's important to understand how this stuff works as a baseline. Honestly, I'd argue that the lack of context for this is one of the most off-putting elements for the mainstream, more so than any bad vibes from behind the scenes. From the outside, it can just seem like this big fan club who are all in on something you can't really easily understand, and without a quick foot in the door, it's much simpler to just write this stuff off as too weird and too much effort to bother with. I kinda get that. The connection the idol is trying to foster with fans requires an in-group of those who have bought in, and that naturally needs to leave others on the outside. It can only really be conducive to mainstream success if you make that in-group the size of, say, the Swifties. When idol fans get defensive, it's important to understand that this idol dream narrative is a big part of what they are defending. I see a lot of criticism of the culture come from people who very clearly don't get why anyone likes it and just want to act as if they are unveiling some deep secret underbelly by pointing out that the idol industry is pretty rife with abuse and exploitation. Did you know that if they try to do a boyfriend, they will be killed into prison? Like, I have no disagreement with most of that. The industry is full of stuff that ranges from merely shady to outright horrific and abusive. The cliff notes here are literally artists submitting to being under the thumb of a corporation for the long shot chance of getting famous. That's hardly a healthy recipe. Bigger topic than this video, but it's certainly worth criticizing. It's even a sentiment shared by a lot of idol fans. Hell, they've probably seen a talent they really care about get pushed through that corporate ringer in real time. They are more than aware of these problems. Though on that subject, I do want to make note of the fact that idol culture overall manifests in VTubing differently to the actual idol industry, and so drag and dropping criticisms directly across is not a compelling argument on its own. You have to actually indicate that VTubing inherits those issues in a meaningful sense. I often agree with people presenting this kind of analysis, but it can get frustrating when it feels like folks are defaulting to broad strokes rather than trying to be more specific. Again, could continue on this subject, but it's best given a video of its own. On the more positive front, at the very least, I hope people might now have a clearer understanding of why, despite the very well publicized and understood problems, folks are still willing to buy into this idol dream. There's a reason it still works after all this time. But VTubing has many distinctions from Japanese idol culture that go beyond just aesthetics and into the creative process and experience. And chief among those distinctions would be the extra flavors added by the culture of anime. Hell yes, we get to talk about anime.
Section 4. All the Worlds and SOS Brigade.
Living two doors down from the criticism that VTubers are too tied up with idol culture is the criticism that VTubers are too fake and performative. They're all a bunch of annoying voices and incel pandering. The very old criticism, and one that even got a rerun during some of the fallout to Iron Mouse's appearance at the Streamer Awards. There are a lot of folks who simply do not or maybe cannot understand why someone would want to be cringe in public on purpose. If that's you, I can't guarantee that I can help you understand or anything. We might just have fundamentally different values in entertainment, but I hope you can appreciate that kayfabe and character are fundamental aspects that make VTubing interesting and unique. Many VTubers regularly play some degree of a character. They embellish, they pretend to be more excited or scared or angry than they actually are. They talk about having a tail or living for 1,000 years. The genre has very evident roots in Japanese animation and brings a lot of similarities along for the ride. Wacky visuals, big reactions, quotable catchphrases, starry-eyed sentimentality, and who could forget the fan service. The stylism of the medium allows for the performers to really go all in on being crowd-pleasing and giving the people exactly what they want to see under the guise of a character. I always think back to the clip of Koseki Bijou playing Deltarune and coming across the moment when it's revealed that the duplicitous Queen character has secretly been a mobile gamer the whole time.
Gamer! I only played... mobile gamer! No! I feel sick. I'm gonna throw up. Oh.
Now, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I don't believe that simply learning somebody enjoys a bit of Candy Crush is devastating enough information for the real-life actress performing as Bijou to literally repeat her lunch on camera. I think she might be pulling what us VTuber journalism experts refer to as a joke. She is taking a simple feeling of dislike for a type of game and blowing it up to the most bombastic, emotional extreme of physiological repulsion. The character Koseki Bijou is such a true lover of real video games that even encountering someone that enjoys the second-rate hackneyed garbage that passes for mobile gaming makes her want to chuck on sheer principle. It's very rooted in anime storytelling logic, where if you have an emotion, you do it as loudly as possible. I mean, normal people might affect their way of talking here and there, but if you do it too extensively, it is considered kind of eccentric behavior.
If somebody were to like push you into a meat grinder, and like one of your finger bones is still intact, they're not going to pick it up and go, well, see, yeah, it wasn't an instant kill move. You still got like this part of your finger left.
But if you're already a cartoon, just as privilege, mate. Just like we saw with the burnt peanut, that can let you get away with all manner of buffoonery. Bijou pretends to spew not because it's realistic, but because it's simply more entertaining, on top of telling you something about her tastes. This is not a true-to-life reaction from Bijou, but I would argue that it's still an authentic one. It's just that it's playing in the realm of being metaphorically or emotionally true, rather than literally true. The action is a performance, but the underlying values, personality, and expression are all honest to Bijou and what she wants to communicate to the audience about herself. And these character moments aren't just limited to the streamers, mind you. VTubing has long had expectations for the fans and the role they are intended to play to keep that kayfabe going. VTuber fans are expected to yes and the performer and make sure they have material to work with. They are also acting, playing along. A nice easy example would be someone like Niji Sanji's unfortunate alchemist Angie Katrina. In her personal life, or so the story goes, Ms. Angie has not been all that romantically successful, and this has established a long precedence of banter with her chat. Angie will often peruse her viewership for potential boyfriend material or look for kindly advice from other ladies, and chat, of course, takes this as a fantastic opportunity to tease her and play hard to get. In this environment, responding with keen, straightforward interest in her romantic advances is akin to stuffing up your lines. If you give in to Angie's boisterous temper tantrums and sulky puppy dog eyes, you've kind of spoiled the whole tug-of-war dynamic that's going on. In other words, when in Rome, you rage bait as the Romans do. That is your role in the play.
なんで似た別の人を探すの？ここにいるだろ、ここに！狙えよ！当たってこいよ！
Again, the basis in anime character dynamics is not an accident. This mutual understanding is what keeps the banter fun. For the sake of variety, we could also look at the direct opposite case in independent streamer Shigeru Yui, whose dynamic with chat is encouraging them to be the annoying ones and her responding with snarky, derisive scorn. She plays the sensible straight man and they all sit around goofing off, a pack of giggling grade schoolers asking the teacher,
Oi, miss, can you say 6'7", miss? Can you say 6'7"?
来年は2人でいい年にしような。1人でいい年にしてください。
The unofficial name that her fanbase chose for themselves is literally the trash. There is a lot of speculation from the sidelines that VTubing is full of these cult-like personalities with audiences slavishly devoted to their idols in the vain hope that one day they will be able to win their personal affections. In reality, a lot of the time the vibes are much closer to a low-stakes open mic night, one where the audience cheers along because it's easier to have a good time when you actually want to have a good time. VTubing is essentially the longest and most ambitious episode of The Muppet Show ever broadcast. There is still that idol-influenced in-group thing going on, but for the most part, it doesn't prevent this stuff from being just kinda chill, man. Sit in on a few nights, you'll pick it up, no trouble. But this lesson still hasn't caught up with the Burnt Peanut fans yet, ever insistent that he is somehow an exception to a set of rules that don't even exist. I saw a tweet made by indie VTuber Tiny Pixie Day listing out some of the more common positive attributes fans attach to Peanut, and anecdotally I can confirm these as accurate from the comment sections I've scoured. The list runs the usual gauntlet of flipping lazy VTuber stereotypes to paint Peanut as some genre-saving breath of fresh air, which is especially funny when two of these entries are just fucking incorrect.
Number 1. Doesn't fake his voice.
Alright fellas, time for the little trick, Too easy? Is it extra campers? Oh my god, there is, and he's holding a grenade.
I am your conqueror. I am your demon.
Like, I'll grant you it's still clearly his voice, no voice changer or whatever, but to pretend he isn't giving a very exaggerated performance of how he would normally talk is clown behaviour. This is well within the usual degree of creative license other VTubers take with their voices. A lot of folks rocking some kind of overstated squeaker voice outside their normal range end up dropping that sucker if they're none too keen on getting laryngitis. But that said, let's not pretend that natural voices can't be just as weird as cartoon ones. Many VTuber fans would actually take the variety in vocals as a point of pride for the medium. If you don't love Usada Pecora speaking with the raspy squawk of a chain-smoking budgie, then you can get the hell out of my house. To be crystal, I have no issue with Peanut speaking however he wants, but a spade is a spade around here, and that man is acting. Point number 1 is scientifically proven fraud. Number 2 is that he feels relatable and down to earth to the audience, which is at least understandable for a certain type of person. As is number 3, focuses on being entertaining. But number 4
doesn't make sexual jokes.
I'm gonna have to have a parent meeting with you and your dad. Come with ball gags in hand and only leather underwear.
Yes.
There we go. Penis. Martin, put your pussy away. Actually, you know what's crazy is Hassan lended me his dog collar and I strap it around my testicles while I do it for some extra zest.
You want to blow the dick and balls?
No, we're not blowing up the dick and balls. There's nothing in there.
Lads, this is not arguable. He literally does that. The only reason you think it doesn't count is that he's a guy, so it's apparently less cringe compared to when a woman does it. VTubers make a lot of sex jokes because Everyone makes sex jokes all the time. It is one of the most foundational topics for comedy. Obviously, some people have bad sex jokes, they're lazy or overdone or basic, but that's true of every type of comedy. If you have a fundamental issue with women doing it, then I'd wager you're the type of person who has better things to worry about, like having PE tomorrow. Yet again, I'm reminded of white kids talking about Eminem. He's not more real than the rest of the field. He's just the only one that you will even give the time of day. But okay, putting the Muppets aside, we can now set course for more interesting conversations. I can talk about how playing a character doesn't compromise your authenticity, just changes how it's expressed, but there remains a few wrinkles to that notion that we need to look at. Because playing a character isn't strictly limited to the realm of artsy-fartsy creativity and expression. If we're going to talk about mainstream appeal and crossover, you can only go so long without bringing up the money.
Section 5. The Information Super Hamster Wheel.
Let's start out with a simple comparison between our two talking peanuts. Much as it's a fun coincidence that the two have picked the same specific legume for their gimmick character, I'm more interested on how different the two are despite having the same basic starting point. Choosing a peanut as your avatar in many respects precludes you from being taken remotely seriously. Doesn't matter if it's the weird Uncanny Valley Instagram filter or the stylized cartoony look, a peanut is a ridiculous thing to project life and humanity onto. There is a non-trivial amount of history to human cultures anthropomorphizing animals, but that is not true of a piece of food. The visual choice immediately sets up both of these streamers as being more suited to comedy, selling themselves on the initial novel absurdity to draw a crowd of gawking onlookers. And despite the simplicity of the bit, it still seems to work pretty okay. Watching the Burnt Peanuts interview on Around the Bar was an exercise in watching host Davis flap his flabbergasted jaw at the fact that he was talking to a peanut. What will they think of next? And sure, that works as a first pitch, but as far as getting people to stay, these two are opposites. Burnt Peanut is about immediacy. He is a direct product of the Western content meta. It's focused on short-form clips and virality and bite-sized ADHD instant gratification delivery. The in-jokes and creative reference points are simple and intuitive to anyone who's been on the internet for more than 10 minutes. Even people who don't mess with the guy are likely not confused about why he's popular in certain quarters or what people enjoy about him. They just don't think it's remotely good. Peanuts-kun is almost the complete reverse, especially to an English-speaking fan. I feel it prudent to mention the 2025 Topi Christmas song right around now. In contrast to most of the Topi tracks being fairly conventional pop songs in structure, 2025 is an almost excruciating 14 real-life minutes of the same Fruity Loops instrumental and Peanut aimlessly warbling through a mouthful of auto-tune. There had been a preceding expectation that this might be the last year of the annual Christmas get-togethers, and rather than just come out and, confirm or deny that, Peanut decided to drag out the suspense through an absolutely agonizing gauntlet of tedious filler verses, pausing mid-sentence on cliffhangers and singing the chorus 500 million fucking times.
お、来た最後
クリスマスかも
じゃあ終わるってことかじゃあ必須ただ言ってるだけだなこれサンプリングできてねえだろこれあでもそうか終わるってことねよしよし来い来いいえ終わるって言え確約をくれ言い切ってくれあラララだ最悪だラララだおい確約してくれもう今年で終わるって言ってくれ
After the song eventually limps its way over the finish line, having still not definitively answered the basic question, Toya turns to Peanut still confused, but praying that he's finally free of this stupid running joke and can maybe have a normal Christmas in the near future. Peanut in response leaves a pause and then says, "Oh yeah, by the way, see you next year." The end. So fucking wanker. The entire chat promptly starts fantasizing about strangling this dickhead for wasting 14 minutes of their lives for literally no reason other than he's a troll and thought it would be funny. If I'm being completely honest, I kind of agree in retrospect. I think this shit is hilarious, but you can imagine how subjecting the audience to the world's most interminable rage bait for a quarter of an hour It's going to be a pretty divisive joke on a good day. He can get away with it given his audience is used to Peanut's brand of weird chicanery, but pull this kind of a stunt in front of a more mainstream TikTok audience, and people will be unhappy. These Christmas streams are some of the biggest crowds Peanut gets for the entire year. He knows, he wasted their time anyway. And it's that eccentricity that defines a lot of what Peanuts-kun gets up to. He has managed some mainstream crossover with more accessible stuff or fluke hits, but the bread and butter here has always been locking down a core, ride-or-die fan base. His work isn't built for quick viral waves, it's looking for long-term investment, fans who will have some longevity and give him leniency to work on whatever weird, indulgent projects he likes. Like, for example, writing a 4.5-minute song about wanting to murder Thomas the Tank Engine. Yeah, I actually like that one. Getting into Peanuts-kun takes a degree of commitment, a willingness to learn the in-jokes and references, dig into the side projects and back catalogue, watch the original cartoon, be patient with the indulgent tomfoolery. Even 4 years removed from the end of his cartoon series, those original characters will still pop up in his content and music without reintroduction pretty regularly, and he still does all the old voices as if nothing's changed. He's not privating his old content, in fact, you have to go back and watch it if you want to know who this green dude is. The eccentricities will be alienating to a lot of viewers, but on the flip side, they could very well be the reason that a lot of others keep coming back. Could be the reason that they make the effort to travel to a live show with cash in hand. Even if you just want to keep it about the money, dedication can pay dividends. Now, of course, Burnt Peanut has developed a loyal group of long-term followers, and Peanuts-kun has made more instantaneously appealing material to hook in the newcomers, especially with a lot of Pockopy's more easygoing energy. But I still think the broader tendency for each holds true. Although in the case of Burnt Peanut, is it fully true? We spent a lot of this video circling around VTubing and mainstream crossover, and on the surface, Burnt Peanut did seem to paint the way. On top of taking home 2 bits of gold from the Streamer Awards, he was the highest viewed Twitch streamer for January and February 2026 by a fairly comfortable margin. But this is where we have to bring up that asterisk that there have been fairly persistent accusations of view botting. Granted, that's often hard to verify beyond he blew up too quickly or his numbers don't match up, but I've seen compelling enough arguments in this case to not entirely brush them off. I don't necessarily want to deliberate too much on specifics here for fear of subjecting the poor unsuspecting viewer to surprise math. Suffice to say, a lot of the main contentions are around fairly uniform peaks and valleys of viewership that seem a little too neat to be fully organic, and a mismatch between the viewer counts and the chat activity compared to similar sized streamers. I'll stress that mileage does vary a lot here. Counter-arguments posit that Peanut has a strong preponderance of second screen viewers who won't be engaged in chat but might still be technically watching. That kind of demographic dropping off during ad breaks might also explain some of the weird dips. Then again, botting is hardly a rarity in top-level streaming. In fact, some stream managers actively encourage it, and there's very little conclusive evidence after the fact. I regret to inform some of the more belligerent haters that Peanut's hype is, from what I've seen, more coming from real people than bots, but exactly how high that number is remains up in the air. Although not helping anything is Peanut's defense being, "You can't prove it," rather than, I don't know, "I'm not view botting," doesn't inspire much confidence. In fact, as should be clear by what I've focused on, I've been drafting this script for long enough to see Peanut's initial rise post-awards curdle to the point that doors to the big leagues are starting to close. Over the course of just making this video, I've seen the wider public perception of Burnt Peanut slowly tank under the weight of the view-botting allegations, unflattering viral clips, and the all-purpose insults of co-worker material and burger streamer. Bizarrely enough, his supercharged formula for pumping out viral shorts seems to have worked a little too well. Places like TikTok and Instagram Reels have been flooded with Burnt Peanut clips to the extent that the overexposure kicked into high gear in only a few months, and the backlash came along with it. That isn't enough on its own to sink the guy's career. I expect he will continue to truck along for the foreseeable future and do decently well for himself with the established audience, but the saturation has unquestionably closed a lot of opportunities. If this guy has a ceiling for his popularity, I'd say he's not far off reaching it. Crossovers with Fortnite are great and all, but that Streamer Awards glow is not coming back. And if more recent clips are to be believed, I think he's figured that out and is now turning his focus to bunkering down with the core fans, much like our other fella.
Views are dropping. We need pal, I'm here. My job is to entertain. The core bungulators that are here to be part of the community, not beat a dead horse for a couple extra thousand viewers.
Naturally, Peanut getting nudged out of the public good graces has been a little vindicating for myself, even if I think that some of the more popular accusations are a little unfair. If you don't like the guy's sense of humor, well, we're in the same boat there, so I get it, but I still feel like the cringe allegations can end up a little disingenuous. Like, yeah, old mate has silly catchphrases like goop and bungulator and he bounces his head around in a way that's very quirky. I understand it could get annoying with overexposure, but every time I see one of these smarmy, smart aleck Gen Z takedowns that are not actually punching much higher in terms of comedic repertoire, let's be honest, I do have to wonder whether these people have that same level of energy for Jack Black, or Jim Carrey, or Rick Mail, or Auntie Donna, or Germa, all of whom, last I checked, are grown-ass men who make silly noises for a living. But that's just a personal bugbear, that's not a major deal. I just get snippy when it feels like people are cashing in on a popular dunk target rather than offering candid criticism. In my view, the real problem with just calling the guy cringe sufficing for the end of conversation is that it's let some of the more interesting critiques of Peanut slip by the wayside. Let's remind ourselves of what we're looking at here. If you accept my categorization from earlier, then we are seeing the trajectory of one of the most successful new independent VTubers of 2025. I see so many indies sad about the lack of upward mobility in the streaming space at the moment, but all told, this guy seems to have done alright for himself. And all without some agency reaching into his pockets and controlling his direction. This must be it. This must be what it looks like to reach the top without compromising. Actually, let's stop dancing around the attribution next to Peanut's name. The Burnt Peanut signed to the talent management agency Loaded in April 2025. His early exposure to success in the middle of that year and rapid rise towards the end was due to a lot of things, but a pretty major part of that was his crossovers with larger streamers. Streamers large enough to make you question how exactly he managed to squeeze himself into those voice calls until you check for the obvious connection. HMF is also signed to Loaded. Cloaksy signed in 2019, although can't confirm he's still there. Shroud is signed to Loaded. Summit 1G, Loaded. Lyric, Loaded. Landmark, Loaded. Myth, Loaded. Gotta say, seems pretty handy having some million subscriber contacts in your back pocket. I wouldn't mind me some of them. Guess old mate has more in common with the corpo VTubers after all. But, okay, as fun as it is to point this stuff out, it's not strictly an industry plant, right? That's the agency just doing their job. They signed him when he was smaller and put him in a position to get bigger. It's not nefarious, that's how this is supposed to work. And Peanut is still in control of what he says and does. He's still working independently, those guys just handle all the paperwork and the boring emails. It's not like those Japanese agencies always rifling through your pockets and telling you to keep it PG, right? Okay, I could grant you that, but it still doesn't clear everything up. Just because indie streamers don't have a literal boss looking over their shoulder, that does not mean they don't have an employer. Like all of us, their CEO is the algorithm. They are free as an indie to make any content they like, express themselves with whatever degree of specificity they please. It's just that unless the audience is locked in, they best be ready for a bit of number go down. But that doesn't have to be disheartening. They can just do what the algorithm likes. Bit of clickbait, a few trending topics, sand off any of those weird parts to make it a bit more simple to understand, and, you know, with a little bit of luck, actually, a lot of luck, now the numbers are all looking good. And the indie VTuber didn't even need a boss standing over their shoulder telling them to make more lucrative content because now they have one living in their brain for free. He just likes to sit there whenever they decide to cut loose and stream something that really appeals to them for a change and quietly remind that, you know, this might damage monthly watch time or lock them out of covering something trending and they still might have to cut that swearing section out to not get demonetized and deprioritized in the recommendations. Oh, but other than that, you know, world's your oyster. I don't say any of this to engage in pointless, cynical whataboutism. I just get frustrated seeing some of the independent VTubers and creators in general talking about their corner of the scene as if it's some renegade punk counterculture to the corporate side. The restrictions and expectations aren't quite so tight, but let's not pretend that agency VTubers and indies alike aren't still languishing under similar issues. The struggle to court the whims of an algorithm that barely makes sense even when it isn't being endlessly tweaked. The arbitrary platform TOS rules that can at times just dash entire careers against the rocks with no warning. The gamification of content production to encourage unhealthy neurotic work attitudes that create a constant churn of new stuff in the vague hope that your constant churn of new stuff won't get buried by everyone else's constant churn of new stuff. Let's rip the band-aid off. The frustrating thing about the burnt peanuts formula is that it works. He's doing everything he's supposed to. He has a unique, instantly recognizable brand identity. His sense of humor is perfect for algorithms. It's fast, instantaneous, basic, and free of anything too meaningfully risque. He's created a strong sense of community with fans who share camaraderie and in-jokes. He streams and posts videos constantly. Hell, if rumors are to be believed, he uses stream bots, something that I need to stress, even supposed streaming managers are now openly encouraging people to do, because if it's already broken, why try harder? He has made the algorithms very happy. As much as we don't like it, it works. You want to get to the top fast, and you don't care how you do it? This is not a bad way to go, as the sea of bandwagoning clones might suggest. But if even that has too much dignity for you, our other peanut faithful sheriff proves that playing the drama circuit for easy rage bait clicks is still very much a winning formula. So long as you can hack being a lol cow for the length of time it takes for you to run out of outrageous bullshit to throw at the wall. I guess any attention is worth it when you're that flagrantly desperate and lacking in shame. People want to tell me that idol culture is too off-putting for the mainstream for all of its obvious corporate machinations, while their faves keep literal product placement in the frame of their set for every single video. We've just swapped out sparkly idol culture for small business grind and hustle culture. We've become so used to creators talking about boosts in the algorithm and sponsorship ratings and getting the bag that we just fold all of that into being an expected part of the content, just a reality of modern entertainment. Of course, I'm not saying people shouldn't do this sort of thing if they need to. Making stuff for the internet is a job, and if the numbers are anything to go off, a job that a lot of folks really value. You should be paid well for that, make no mistake. And if that requires taking sponsorship money or doing ad reads or even product placement, then, such is life. I don't begrudge anyone taking those opportunities to get by. Life is hard enough. It's just that when you do that, you have to acknowledge that you are making compromises, same as anyone else. And I don't appreciate the sentiment of folks pretending that they're somehow gaming the system when they're out here playing by those exact same rules. For as much as the Burnt Peanut sells himself as a throwback to the good old days of the Call of Duty lobbies, he's still cognizant enough of his bottom line to not get too edgy. The now infamous "I'm going to say a slur" clip, delivered with all of the transgressive edge of a D-tier Simpsons episode, is a prime example. It's not just the cardboard delivery that makes this clunker drop like a gutter ball, it's the fact that for all of the chud posturing, he won't actually go there. His mouth doesn't even move enough to sell the joke properly. It is transparently phony, flat, fake, from top to bottom. If he is placed in the position to choose to emulate the authentic expression he would have had in those old lobbies and stay true to the whole point of this character, or keep his ad money, you don't need me to tell you which one he picks. This is all downstream of the now mandatory internet grind culture. Head down, grow your pockets, don't say anything to mess with the money. It is a culture that is fundamentally based on capitalist ascendancy and aspirationalism. It proclaims the time-honored story of good things coming to those who work hard and dedicate themselves. Its mythology of the visionary entrepreneur who starts from nothing with some big ideas and builds themselves a stairway to the sky with nothing but their own hard work, careful planning, and savvy decisions. A fully self-made individual. For a lot of folks, it's a mythology they will make significant sacrifices for. Even if they know deep down the scene has been more and more infested with the same old Hollywood smoke and mirrors stretched over the same old corporate machinery. Content creation has been subsumed by the broader entertainment industry for years. It's not the independent alternative to TV and film. It's the direct market competitor that's arguably been even more successful at monopolizing people's attention. I mean, look at Moist Critical, look at Kai Cenat, look at the Burnt Peanut. Folks you know are just as much flesh and blood normal average people like you and me can build a social media empire, a household name. Doesn't that just go to show that with hard work, dedication, and a bit of luck, anybody can make it?
Section 6. A pet bottle rocket.
So, I guess that's it. Everyone's a massive sellout and we can't fix it. Is that what I wanted to communicate with this whole hour and something video? Is that it? No. Look, I'd like to think I can give you a bit more to think about than just that. The name for this section is from a song Peanuts made back in 2022 called Pet Bottle Rocket. I think it was this song that put the guy's work in perspective for me. When I first found Peanuts, I thought he was the single dumbest thing that ever scraped together a long-term career on the internet. I was more than happy to gawk at him as a nasally walking punchline with his embarrassing rap skills, asinine sense of humour, and gangly attempts at being cool. But the line between something being scrappy and weird and amateur in a negative way and those same things being endearing is not all that hard to cross. The difference often comes down to whether something has quote-unquote heart and soul in it, which is not only an incredibly subjective and tenuous judgment, it's also a two-way street. Art is a conversation like that. Peanut can put all the care and soul and personal experiences he can muster into his work, but before it can be worth anything, you have to notice it and accept it. You have to listen to what he says and take it some level of seriously. Folks love to talk about soul and passion and realness in content creation, but how many of you will be willing to look for those things beyond the surface level? How many people will take one look at this guy and make a mental judgment that not only is he trash, but he's incapable of making anything other than trash? I mean, he's a talking peanut. That's just an inherently unserious character, so clearly his entire creative project is unworthy of my time. If you're not presenting yourself exactly as you would be in real life and act exactly how anyone would expect someone like you to act, then you're faking your voice. You're selling the audience a pandering fantasy. You're not being real. And as someone who was on the other side of that argument on PeanutsCon specifically at one point in time, I can now fully appreciate how frustrating it is to hear those takes. In a 2022 interview with online pop culture magazine Caillou alongside rapper Kamui, Anipoko specifically stated, of course translated to English, it was because of that virtual barrier that I was able to express my true feelings. This has always been an authentic expression of the things he likes and the things he is. The strange visual designs of the characters are his real art style. He grew up listening to Japanese rap music on the car radio during long commutes out of the city. His ties to that scene are not trend-chasing opportunism. He's sincerely passionate about Japanese hip-hop and still does features for artists much smaller than him even now. Like I said earlier, the design for his sister's character has its roots in the cultural history of that city they grew up in. It's true that Peanut doesn't show his actual face or talk in his normal voice, but in focusing on that, are you not ignoring all the things he's already shown you? A whole career of him expressing what he likes, what he finds interesting, who he likes to hang out with, where he's been, what he's done, is just putting some guy's real face to all of that context, the only thing that makes it legitimate. People being attracted to the mystique of the person behind the mask is understandable, even if it can get a little bit parasocial. Folks tend to gloss over that part. But at a certain point, are we not just trying to override someone's sincere identity because it doesn't fit into any of the usual boxes we have? Deciding that if their stream isn't just a direct simulation of what it would be like to hang out with them in real life, then it's all a waste of time. The mainstream never wanted authenticity. They just want more of what they already find easy to understand. There will always be people left out of that equation. More power to them if they decide they don't want to fit into those arbitrary standards. Of course, I stand by your freedom to be a hater, like I said before. You don't owe any artist anything. You are allowed to have your preferences and turn down what someone's offering. That's your right. It happens all the time. You can look at a grown man in a mascot costume rapping about money and say, no, this is fucking dumb. I wouldn't blame you. Even now, there are times when the voice and the model kind of get on my nerves. I totally understand most people not liking it or just finding him too weird or obnoxious. It's fully your choice to engage, but it is, to some degree, a choice. You choose whether to dig into that deeper context, and you choose how to interpret that context. You choose whether you'll let him be more than a one-note joke. And that brings us back around to Pet Bottle Rocket. A song that I saw in a fan survey was voted to be his audience's favourite song he had made as of 2023. It's a very hopeful and nostalgic song about Peanut's rise, his struggles and successes. He talks about when he was younger, looking out of the window of the kids' room in his parents' house where everything started. He could only see such a small glimpse of the real world back then. And suddenly, all of this crazy stuff happened, and the weirdo animation project he made in the breaks between his shitty job changed life for him and the rest of his family forever. In some ways, this bizarre career path he's built is like a backyard bottle rocket that has somehow managed to break through the atmosphere and might even be headed higher. The world isn't drifting through the kids' room window anymore. It's all laid out underneath him, stretching out as far as the eye can see. Possibilities and opportunities in all directions, and all he can feel is this childlike wonder at how overwhelming it all is. He's just awestruck. I mean, isn't it kind of nice to hear about a content creator who makes it and is immediately making music about all of the childhood dreams they can finally make come true, rather than, hey, you should buy their stupid drink. He's someone who knows he's just a flesh and blood imperfect human who's now in the position to make strange music and videos seen by millions of people. Some little old nobody, finally shining like a star. If you listen closely, you can almost hear past the nasal tone of the Peanut character and sense the real voice of Poco's older brother, telling you what this all means to him. Isn't that kind of special? Isn't that cool? Doesn't it just go to show that with hard work, dedication, and a bit of luck, anybody can make it? We can't really get away from the underlying systems here. The commerce, the structure of the platforms, the grind set, the ascendant entrepreneur myth-making, not to mention the concessions necessary to even keep a career like this going in the first place. Peanut has been lucky. He started when the medium was still fresh and managed to make a lot of crucial connections in VTubing and in the Japanese music scene at large. He's had fluke viral hits. He's been able to get consistent sponsorship deals. He's had to play nice with a lot of corporate entities and brands to retain his spot. There's a pragmatic reality to keeping a ship this big afloat, even though he's yet to crack 1 million subs on either of the main channels. But that said, we can't get away from the sentimental allure either. The humble idle dream of making it is one ultimately built on optimism. It's a story that has many names because it taps into a very basic human desire to find a satisfying karmic narrative in the chaos of life. It's based on a hope that things will be worth it in the end. Patience will be rewarded, even if it's just for an individual. That after all those compromises, there could be a place that celebrates the real you as something genuinely special, interesting, talented, maybe even important. A community that sees your ambitions and achievements as genuine. Maybe one of those small things that we can do is celebrate the people who make it against those odds and really try to make something special with that newfound success. Harness it to show us content we haven't seen before, even if it doesn't suit all taste buds. Frankly, as AI and algorithms continue to pull us ever closer to the Mr. Beast Grey Goo art singularity, having the stones to actually stand by your weird vision of creativity is worth enough respect on its own. In an era of cheap rage bait and lolcows, presenting and supporting the things you think are genuinely great to help other people understand that appeal, especially when it isn't on the surface, well, that counts for a lot too. Not every talented weirdo gets their chance to be a cult following favourite artist. We gotta treasure the ones we get. There are a lot of things you could say about Peanuts-kun, but fake, pandering, inauthentic, putty. I reckon you'd have to be nuts.